Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today's podcast has been recorded in Oslo, Norway, at the 2023 buildingSmart International Standards Summit, the annual gathering for all those leading the development and adoption of open data and digital systems across the global infrastructure and built environment sector. Clearly, the built environment sector faces many challenges, such as the need to raise productivity, drives towards net zero, and boost economic and social value gained from the vast public spend being committed by governments around the world. So the use of data and digital systems are really underpinned by new tools such as artificial intelligence, new ecosystems of digital twins. They are really set to become critical in the race to deliver this more efficient, effective and useful and of course sustainable infrastructure assets. Open data is going to be key to this. Data that can be freely used, reused and redistributed by anyone, unencumbered by the constraints of software vendors or asset owners and their requirements. And OpenBIM, underpinned by international data standards, are some of the concepts that buildingSmart are really trying to use to redefine the world of digital engineering to ensure that data can be shared effortlessly and without cost up and down the supply chain. So, to discuss this issue, my guest today is Patrick MacLeamy, former chairman and founder of buildingSmart International and former chief executive of global architecture practice HOK, and the man over the last 30 years has been devoted to the principle of open data, not only persuading the infrastructure and built environment sector to embrace the concept, but providing the tools to enable it to happen. So Patrick, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
My goodness, thank you. I don't think I've ever had such a welcome.
Well, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. Well, let's kick off. Find a little bit more about buildingSmart International. Around 30 years ago, you led the movement, the buildingSmart movement, and helped found the organisation as a global community, and you say committed to creating and developing open digital ways of working for the built asset industry. So set the scene for us. Tell us about buildingSmart and its mission.
Yes, okay, thank you. buildingSmart actually grew out of frustration on the part of myself and people in other companies. And we formed a private consortium in 1994 with U.S.-based but all internationally focused companies. There was an architecture firm that was HOK, my firm. We had a contractor. We had equipment suppliers. We had some engineers. And we had some software houses. And our goal was something that I didn't understand clearly at the time because it was brand new to me. 1994, the internet was in its infancy. I think I didn't get starting using email, for example, until about then. And so things were all new, but it grew out of frustration, and the frustration was simple. And I'll try to make this a very simple story. I'm an architect, so my world is buildings. And buildings are, of course, the art of making buildings is as old as civilization. And buildings used to be simple. One stone piled on top of another stone, or maybe some wood put together to make a structure and keep the rain out, keep the weather out. And the people who did this were in guilds, building guilds. Mm-hmm. And they knew everything there was to know about their material. A mason's guild knew everything about how to build with stone or brick.
Yeah, so they were setting the standards at that point.
They were setting the standards, but the standards were not digitized, of course. They weren't even written down. They were handed down.
Right, yeah.
If you started as a guild, as a stonemason's guild, you started by shaping rocks into some kind of shape. And after you got pretty good at that, maybe you got to put one into place. And if you were a guild master, the master builders were guild masters. They knew how high you could build a wall before you needed a buttress. Mm-hmm. They knew how far you could span with an arch, and so on. And they were really the first architects in my mind.
Right.
And so what happened? That system worked well for thousands of years. Here's what happened. The world of buildings got very complicated, complex. Instead of just one or two materials to make a building, we have buildings with thousands of materials, millions of pieces. The art of building has become the art and science of building. And to add to the complexity, we have codes building codes that started out as simple things to keep buildings from burning down that have turned into life safety code and now environmental codes that are all quite complex. And I think just in my lifetime of as an architect, 50 years, the codes have doubled and doubled again in terms of what we have to comply with.
So that led you to think, well, we need to have some kind of digitized system.
Right.
To
How do you manage
there.
the complexity?
Yeah.
How can I, as an architect, coordinate the work? When I started as a young architect, buildings were designed by architects with 2D sheets of paper and plan sections and elevations and details. And we always had difficulty coordinating our work with the work of the engineers and then finally with the work of the contractor. We always seemed to fall short. And so that put me on a mission. There's got to be a better way to coordinate.
Right.
And then I met this fellow, Ian Howell. Ian is now the chairman of buildingSmart. He just replaced me. And Ian was working for Autodesk at the time, but Ian is an architect by training. And Ian and I talked, and Ian said, I have a solution to it. It's something called interoperability. Wow, what does that word mean? And so he explained it to me and explained it again. Finally, he said, interoperability will help you coordinate. So my early idea about what buildingSmart was going to do was to solve geometry problems, clash problems, making sure that things fit.
Well, one of the things that's at the heart of what you came up with, when trying to resolve this issue of interoperability was international foundation classes,
yes.
IFCs.
Yes.
So we hear a lot about IFCs.
Yes.
But what are they? They sit at the heart of buildingSmart, but what do they do? What are they?
Right. Okay. So let's talk about that. And again, think about it this way: that when we started, computing was in its infancy compared to today, but object technology had just been introduced in computing. What does that mean? It means to teach a computer to understand what something is instead of just a line on a piece of paper. To recognize, for example, what is a door. If we could teach a computer to understand that would be useful. And then we could actually share that information between software houses, and everybody would have the same definition.
Right. Yeah.
So I learned from some very smart computer geeks what it takes to make a computer understand what a door is.
Right.
It eventually became IFCs, and the computer term for that is not very sexy. It's called industry foundation classes. What is it? How do you teach a computer to understand? First, the computer needs to understand geometry, height, width, thickness, length, so on.
Right. Yeah.
Second, what are the properties of this object in addition to geometry? Well, it's made of wood, it's made of metal, it's fire rated, it's not fire rated, it has a window in it, it's an exterior door, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can teach the computer to understand what these things are by teaching it to understand what the terms mean. And then what about relationships with other objects? Wow, that's another one. Mm-hmm. That's a huge one. So I'm a door, but in order to function as a door, I have to partner up with a wall someplace because doors belong in walls, and the wall, which also needs to be intelligent, has to actually understand that there's a door coming, and it has to make a hole for the door to fit in.
Right. Yeah.
Basic things.
But the fundamental part of that is that wherever you are in the supply chain, if you're using and you're describing a door, you're all describing it in the same way.
Precisely. That's the magic. Why couldn't Autodesk or Bentley or somebody else do this? Mm-hmm. Because they're commercial establishments, and nobody's going to be allowed to have such a grip on the marketplace. Mm-hmm. It had to be done by an internationally organized, neutral group.
Right.
We had to make these standards, these IFC standards, and give them away for free.
Which brings me on to the next point, because I'm never quite sure where you sit with the software vendors. Are they your friends? Are you their battering them with a big stick. Yeah, I mean, you also use, I've heard you describe IFC as the International Friendship Club.
Yes.
Is that because, you're trying to cajole everybody into the right direction, even though they kind of want to go in a different... Where do you sit with the rest of the market?
Obviously, we all need software. Software companies are our friends. We determined that we had to be neutral, which meant we weren't proprietary. We weren't in the pocket of Autodesk or Bentley or Nemetschek or someone else. Mm-hmm. We had to be neutral in order to have standards that would be trusted by the other software houses.
Right, yeah.
And so we had to develop standards for understanding what a door is that would be acceptable to Autodesk and all the rest, the big dogs and the little dogs in the marketplace. Sometimes the relationship has been a bit strained. But mostly it's been amicable.
Right.
Now, let me get to this International Friendship Club.
Yeah.
What is it? It's not really about the software houses, although we certainly want to be everyone's friend. It's about this. If you're going to develop common definitions for objects, how do you do it? Well, in order to make it really worthwhile, you have to have global standards. Mm-hmm. That means we had to have chapters from different countries so that the people in China and the people in the UK and the people in the US and so on all agreed on what makes a door.
Right.
And so we learned something. We started with chapters, and the first meeting we had, all the chapters were clumped together just like the United Nations, with a little placard in front that said, "Here we are. We're Building Smart France." And actually, it wasn't Building Smart yet. It was the International Alliance for Interoperability, a forgettable name, IAI. We soon changed that to Building Smart. But what we learned was that we couldn't really develop these standards until the barriers between countries broke down. We weren't really building a United Nations. We were building a friendship club, where people, instead of being, well, I'm from China and I'm from the U.S., hello, I'm Wong and I'm Patrick, and we're both architects working to figure out this problem.
Yeah.
So standards making is a matter first of getting to a level of trust with other people so that the barriers come down and we can actually invent these standards that are globally acceptable.
Because I imagine when you started, every single nation had the best way of approaching the problem. They had the best way to define this, and basically everyone was like, come on board with me.
Yes, there was a lot of that. It was acrimonious at times. Mm-hmm. And, when we started, we didn't have an organization. We didn't have a staff. We just had a bunch of people with an idea. And so we had to find our way. And we finally developed the collection of chapters became an international council. We found it was like a committee with no leader, so we developed some leadership. Mm-hmm. And eventually, we divided up people not by chapter, but by teams. Well, in the original days, it was called rooms. Now it would be called domains.
Right.
So we had the first domain we established was the building domain. Now, I would say infrastructure, which we didn't even think about when we started. Mm. Infrastructure is now probably easily 2/3 of our work.
This is the linear infrastructure.
Yes.
It's the
horizontal construction. Basically.
Yeah. So I mean, what fascinates me, Patrick, because you've had a hugely successful 50-year career working as an architect for global practice, HOK. 12 years at chief executive. But we're talking about stuff, and this conference, this summit in Oslo, is going to be filled with people who are, someone might describe them as being pretty geeky.
Yes.
They are down in the weeds.
Yes.
They are really immersed in this whole world of digital data. I mean, how do you get so involved? I mean, how much do you have to learn?
Well, I had a particular interest in this because I had these problems with how to coordinate my work, so that drove me. And I never became geeky, but I became, I don't think. But
which is not a bad thing.
Which is not a bad thing. There's a bridge. I think I was the bridge between the people who really understood the technology behind this and the people who said, well, that's all good to understand it. We have to make it work. Mm. We have to sell it to the global marketplace. Yeah. We have to get other other users to embrace this. We have to get governments to mandate it.
Right. So you are the kind of the translator in chief, are you?
Well, at one time, I guess I was. I think that job has now grown well beyond just me.
Right.
But we used to call ourselves the Church of the True Believers, because if you were not in the church, you couldn't understand a thing about what we were talking about. And so it's really, the way I like to think about it is, if you think of buildingSmart as a technology group, that's actually not the right answer.
Right.
We're really a group that wants to make things better in the construction world.
Right, yeah.
And how things are designed, built, and operated.
Right, so it's a movement for change in many ways.
Yeah, and it's the only, very proud of this, it's the only industry group that's devoted to making standards that we're aware of.
Right.
My industry, the building industry, has, just think about it, the architects are off in their corner with, in the U.S., the AIA, in the U.K., the RIBA, and so on. And the contractors are in their corner with the AGC, Association of General Contractors. All the engineers have their societies. Mm-hmm. We're all off in our corners.
Everyone loves a good silo, Patrick.
And we're all in our silos. And what do we do when we get in our silos? We complain about the other guy. Mm-hmm. So this is the only group where the door is open and everyone is welcome, including the software houses. Mm-hmm. The one concession that we've made in order to keep things neutral is we will not allow software houses to be on our board. Okay. Running the business is for, I'm going to say, industry professionals, people are responsible for building their infrastructure.
And I suppose at the heart of BIM, at the heart of digital engineering, is the drive towards greater collaboration across those silos, across the supply chain. Yet, certainly we've been trying to move towards greater collaboration for 30 years, 40 years. Are we getting there? What's still got to change?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of movement in that direction now. I think partly because of what we're doing, and partly because it just makes good practical sense. Think about this. You want a new automobile. Would you ever imagine going to an automobile designer and having someone design an automobile and then putting that automobile, that finished design, out for a low bid to a factory to build it for you? Would you drive it?
No.
And if it was an airplane, absolutely, for sure not. Mm-hmm. And so we need to learn from the manufacturing industry, which is roughly the same size in the world economy as buildings and infrastructure. Construction and manufacturing are roughly equivalent. Mm-hmm. How is it that my smartphone gets smarter every year with more memory, the price stays about the same or maybe goes even down a bit, mm-hmm. and I can depend on it. It's more and more reliable, and my buildings are still roughly the same as they were when I started out in the practice.
Yeah,
and it's because I believe because our traditions are rooted before the Industrial Revolution. We've learned to work separately instead of together.
Right. Yeah. No. Which I suppose, which leads to the question about how do designers, builders, and owners really need to change then to embrace this vital, the vital leading roles that are needed to evolve and embrace this digital world, which you say that the aeronautical and the automotive have done so well.
Yeah. It's actually starting to happen. It's happening in Europe. It's certainly happening in Asia. Beginning to happen in the U.S., for example, and more in the infrastructure world than in buildings. But the Association of Transportation Officials in the 50 states of the U.S., it's a group called AASHTO. They've mandated now that they want all design-build contracts.
Right.
No more design-bid-build. So they want contractors and designers, which are typically engineers for highways, let's say, to put in bids for the work. Mm-hmm. Please design this for me. Please do a handover from the designer to the builder as a BIM model. And please give me the model in IFC format when you're finished so I can operate it and manage it and maintain it. So that's the owner saying that. I guarantee you, if the owner says, if the UK government or the United States government says, we want this, all the architects, engineers, and contractors would say, yes, when do you want it, and how do I serve you? Owners are really the drivers.
Right, yeah. So they are the driving force behind, or to get everybody else into a line.
Right. And here's the payoff. Why would you mandate this? I think you could save easily 20% on the cost. I think actually once we put our minds to this, we're going to save half.
Yeah.
Half. Think about that. The world needs better buildings. The world needs better infrastructure.
Yeah, that's right.
And it needs to be more affordable.
Well, it needs to be more affordable. It also needs to be lower carbon, and it needs to be more effective and give better social outcomes, which is what the UK, in many ways, did in 2016 when it mandated the use of BIM. But more than that, we're now talking about a new ecosystem of connected digital twins.
Yes.
And I suppose, how do you see this concept of connected digital twins building on the original building information modelling BIM movement to really drive us away from 3D design towards digital asset management, I suppose?
Yes, I think of digital twins as pretty simple. It's actually used in manufacturing all the time. There are two big commercial aircraft manufacturers, non-defense manufacturers in the world now, Airbus and Boeing. Both of them use basically a version of digital twin. When they design a new aircraft, they don't start from scratch.
Right. Yeah.
They start from the data that they pulled off of the use of their current aircraft.
And I imagine everybody else's aircraft as well.
Yes. They don't do test flights with daredevil test pilots. They do test flights that are digital. So if you think putting a building together is complicated, think about putting together a jumbo jet.
Yeah.
So they have pushed this to a natural conclusion, which is we're going to build something. We're going to have sensors in it all over the place that will show how it's performing, and the sensors will tell us when we need to maintain or replace something.
Yeah.
And we're going to use that information to build the next version of that aircraft. That is basically a digital twin. That's a digital version of the real thing that's already in use. We need to do the same thing with buildings and infrastructure.
All of which is phenomenally sensible, Patrick. It's phenomenally sensible, and it's very obvious when you stand back and think, this is clearly the way we should be doing it. Yet we're not. So the question is, why are we not adopting these standards and adopting these ways of thinking? What's stopping us?
Well, I think again, it's probably inertia. We are seeing pretty good signs that people are beginning to adopt. In different countries, there are different pickup rates. But it's, when we started buildingSmart, we thought in 5 years we're going to transform the way the world builds. And we kept moving the goalposts because again, we started with geometry. Now that's pretty well accepted that people have to get the geometry right. Well, what if you want to do zero net energy or zero carbon? How do you do that? So anyway, the world is waking up, but it's never been fast enough for me. Part of my job, and I think part of the job of the buildingSmart leadership, is to wake up the world. Because, again, we're still the church of the true believers. We see it. We see what we can do.
Yet there are still people who consider it to be an unnecessary cost. They consider it to be some kind of snake oil which is being poured all over what they already do incredibly well.
Yes, that's right. Some of the biggest building owners and infrastructure owners and engineering and architecture firms in the world still say this is just something that's an expensive fad. Drives me crazy.
So there's loads of issues going to be discussed at this summit. One of the need to connect products, which is really kind of interesting in you. With the OpenBIM workflow, the role of asset owners. You're going to talk about that, driving open data initiatives, and the need to expand the use of digital workflows. Why is being here in Oslo so important?
Well, I think if you saw us 30 years ago, we could fit around the table that we're sitting at here. It was a very small group. Now our tentacles are, we're now to our 31st or 32nd chapter. Brazil and India, two of the biggest countries in the world, just joined. China, the biggest country in the world by population, or maybe it's India now, has been a long-time member. Mm-hmm. So there's pickup all around the world. And we're getting finally, the attention of two groups that I've been intent on. Because as much as I love architecture, and I'm an architect, architects are not going to change the world. Mm-hmm. The building owners and the product manufacturers have a chance to actually shape that much more than the architects and the engineers.
Right.
And so manufacturers and owners are now coming to the table. Our rail domain is a good example. Rail domain is a collection of most of the European rail companies and China Rail, which is the biggest, I think, easily, and the biggest in the world, mm-hmm. who said, we don't have common standards by which we can design our operate or build our railroads, and we need them. So they poured millions of euros into developing these common standards, mm-hmm. OpenBIM standards for rail. The world of BIM is now the world of the built environment. Mm-hmm. It really is. And maybe there's even an opportunity here, this is way forward thinking, to actually map out the natural environment. Because we live in the world.
Yeah.
The world has a natural environment. We have a man-made or man-shaped environment. What if we could actually map out and populate a global model with everything, so we know how to fit in with nature in the proper way?
Given the challenges that we're trying to deal with climate change, it's absolutely vital that we do that. What drives you personally then to want to see this global built environment sector really succeed? I'm quite sort of interested that you were an architect and you seem to have been drawn across to the infrastructure dark side. But compared to when you're an architect and you're building buildings and you can see the result of what you're doing, I mean, how does this compare? And I suppose what drives you to succeed in this particular environment?
Well, I'll tell you my own personal story. I started as an architect, and in my 50 years as an architect, I've done some really nice buildings that are still in use and very happy with them, but they're usually plunked down in the middle of a city that's not very functional.
Right.
And we're all moving and living in cities now, around the whole world. Developed world, developing world, doesn't matter. Cities are getting bigger and they're getting uglier and they're getting harder to manage. And how can we actually think big enough to take care of that so that cities are noble places where people can be healthy and live free and explore the possibilities of their lives? The way you do it, I think, is by thinking bigger about it. And the tools to do it are a digital twin for a city.
That enables you, as an architect, to think more clearly about the space in between your buildings.
Yes. Buildings are not in isolation. Buildings are connected to the ground and connected to the rest of the city in countless ways, as of course we all know. But thinking about it in a big way like this is something that I think design is good design. Doesn't matter if it's down at the detail of designing the chair that you're sitting on or designing something that fits into a city. You should be able to think at all the scales. But buildingSmart and the tools that we've developed will allow us to model at a bigger scale and really begin to understand the big scale. So my goal is to make it easier for us to sort our way through this explosion of cities that's led to mostly less habitable places, and attack the problem from better understanding so that we can actually make cities better. Okay. That's my goal.
Okay. So sum it up for us then.
Yeah.
How do you see the world of OpenBIM, connected digital twins, advanced data analysis, perhaps the use of artificial intelligence? How do you see all that transforming infrastructure in the built environment for us, the users of it?
Yeah, I think we're just actually scratching the surface. As we've talked about earlier in this podcast, people are still not fully awake to this. but I am, you are, and many of us in our Church of True Believers are. But what we really need is for everybody to wake up, not that this is some cool technology, but what can you do with it?
Right.
What can you do to make things better? And that's really what this is about. It's giving the designer, the architect, the engineer, or the builder, or the user the tools to make something better.
Right.
And better means it's better for people, it's better for the environment.
And so buildingSmart, what happens what's next for buildingSmart? You handed over chairmanship. What are you what are you putting pressure on the board to do next?
Well, I'm actually I'm chairman emeritus. They gave me that nice fancy title, which means I don't have to do anything, but I am writing a book about the history of buildingSmart, how we started, much like this podcast covered, how we got to where we are and where we're going. And the where we're going part is the most fascinating. Mm-hmm. So if I get my job done in 18 months or so, you should be able to see what I really think in print, and maybe it'll be time for another podcast.
Very good. Now, I look forward to seeing that. Patrick, thanks very much for joining me and for explaining, I suppose, what you've been up to and how it all fits together. And it all comes down fundamentally to really trying to get better outcomes from what everybody is working incredibly hard to do. So thanks for sharing some great insights.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. I mean, that's sadly all we've got time for today on the Infrastructure Podcast, but we've got more interviews and more issues to discuss in the pipeline as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the new Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find lots of background information to this podcast and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Patrick, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.